General Odin's dead eyes stared at Earth from the flagship of the Hazari warfleet. Not knowing the humans would soon make him pray, that he listened to the cryptic warning Secretary Brown beamed to him before he gave the order to attack. The sleek black Hazari warships gleamed against the starry backdrop as they approached the blue-green planet. General Odin viewed humanity with disdain, seeing them as just another primitive race to be conquered and subjugated into the ever-expanding Hazari Galactic Empire. Alarms blared across Earth. Defenses mustered hastily to face this existential threat. Secretary-General of the United Terran Alliance Gabriel Brown transmitted an urgent plea to the Hazari fleet. "So you have no idea what you're getting into," Gabriel warned, his voice ominous. "Humanity has faced far greater threats than your empire could ever pose. Turn back now while you still can." His voice stayed steady, but his eyes betrayed a glimmer of resigned sadness. He knew what horrors would be unleashed if the Hazari did not heed his warning. The fate of the human race depended on the Hazari retreat. If they did not, humanity would unleash its full might to protect the galaxy. Odin scoffed at the transmission. His scaled features twisted in a sneer at the empty bravado from this backwater species. The Hazari Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. One more upstart race would hardly make a difference. He gave the order to advance. The mighty Hazari fleet surged forward, an unstoppable tide of destruction poised to envelop the Earth. But as the first salvo of Hazari weapons fire lanced out towards the blue planet, a shimmering energy shield suddenly materialized around Earth. It easily deflected the bombardment. Odin reeled back in shock. Before his disbelieving eyes, a fleet of human warships dwarfing his own shimmered into view. Numbering in the thousands, their hulls emblazoned with the sigil of the United Terran Alliance, they quickly surrounded the outmatched Hazari forces. A grim-faced Gabriel Brown appeared on the view screen once more. "I tried to warn you," he said solemnly. "We humans are the guardians of peace in this galaxy. We protect the weak and innocent from threats like your empire. This is your last chance. Retreat now and never return, or face the full might of the human race unleashed. And believe me," his eyes burned with barely contained power, "that is not something you want to face, ever." The transmission cut out. Odin contemplated the suddenly changed balance of power and came to a sobering realization. He may have just doomed his entire species by his arrogant actions this day. Odin's clawed hand shook slightly as he signed the surrender documents laid out before him on the sleek metal conference table. The scratching of his talon against the digital screen seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence of the room. He could feel the eyes of the human soldiers boring into his back, their energy rifles trained unwaveringly on him and his commanders. As he finished signing away the autonomy of the once-proud Hazari Empire, Odin straightened up and met Gabriel's gaze. The human leader's expression was inscrutable, his dark eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. "It is done," Odin said, his voice rough. "The Hazari will abide by your terms. We will withdraw our forces and cease all aggression, effective immediately." Gabriel nodded, a hint of satisfaction playing at the corners of his mouth. "See that you do. The UTA will be watching closely. Any deviation from our agreement will be met with swift and decisive action." Odin suppressed a shudder at the thinly veiled threat. Around the room, the human personnel continued their work, paying little heed to the momentous events unfolding. To them, it seemed, the subjugation of the Hazari was just another day's work. As the Hazari delegation was escorted back to their ships under armed guard, Odin's mind raced. The casual display of human might, the ease with which they had outmaneuvered his fleet, the untold technological wonders they possessed. It all spoke to a power far beyond anything he had ever encountered. Settling heavily into his command chair, as his ship lifted off from the human complex, Odin stared out at the rapidly receding Earth. The blue marble hung serenely against the starry backdrop, belying the strength of the civilization that called it home. He knew that this day would change the course of Hazari history forever. No longer were they the undisputed masters of the galaxy. Now they were just another subject race, beholden to the whims of the enigmatic humans. As his ship broke orbit and set a course for Hazari space, Odin couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The humans had shown their hand, and the galaxy would never be the same. He could only hope that, in the end, his people would find a way to survive and perhaps even thrive under this new galactic order. But for now, all he could do was obey and pray that the humans would be benevolent overlords. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. Odin paced in his quarters aboard the Hazari flagship, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. The defeated Earth gnawed at him, but curiosity burned even hotter. He needed answers. He opened a channel to the human command center. "This is General Odin. I request an audience with Secretary Brown." There was a pause before a response came. "Request granted. Prepare for transport." In a flash of blue light, Odin found himself in a stark conference room. Gabriel Brown sat at the far end of a long table, gesturing for Odin to take a seat. "I'm glad you reached out, General," Gabriel said. "I imagine you have questions." Odin's scales bristled. "How did your people become so powerful without us knowing? We thought we were the apex predators of the galaxy." Gabriel leaned back, a wry smile on his face. "It's a long story, General, one that starts centuries ago when humanity nearly wiped itself out." For hours, Gabriel spoke of Earth's violent past. He detailed world wars that scorched continents, plagues that decimated populations, and environmental disasters that reshaped the planet. "We were on the brink of extinction," Gabriel said, his voice heavy. "But those crucibles forged us. We emerged united, focused on survival and advancement." Odin listened, enraptured. The human's words painted a picture of a species tempered by fire, emerging stronger than ever. "But you didn't use that strength to conquer," Odin said, confusion evident in his voice. Gabriel shook his head. "No. We'd seen the cost of war. Instead, we became peacekeepers. We use our technology and military might to protect weaker species from aggressors." As Gabriel spoke of humanity's role in the galaxy, Odin felt a grudging respect growing. The concept of altruism on such a scale was alien to the Hazari, but he couldn't deny its effectiveness. "Let me show you some of what makes us strong," Gabriel said, activating a holographic display. Images of vast shipyards and orbital habitats filled the air. Gabriel explained the intricacies of their AI systems, how they coordinated defenses across light years of space. "We're willing to share some of this with the Hazari," Gabriel said, "on the condition you use it peacefully under our guidance." Odin's claws dug into the table. Part of him raged at the idea of serving under another species, but the possibilities. "I need time to consider this offer," Odin said carefully. Gabriel nodded. "Of course, but know that this could be a new beginning for your people." As the meeting concluded, Odin found himself shaking Gabriel's hand. It felt like the dawn of a new era, though what kind remained to be seen. Odin prepared to return to his ship, his legs shaking with the implications of all he'd learned. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of concern on Gabriel's face. "Is something wrong?" Odin asked. As Odin prepared to leave Earth, an urgent transmission crackled through the UTA command center. Gabriel's face hardened as he listened to the frantic report from a human explorer ship. "Change of plans, General," Gabriel said, turning to Odin. "How'd you like a front-row seat to UTA crisis management?" Before Odin could respond, they were whisked away to a sleek UTA battlecruiser. As the ship accelerated to FTL speeds, Gabriel filled Odin in on the situation. "We've encountered a new race called the Zin," Gabriel explained, bringing up holographic star charts. "Peaceful folks, never bothered anyone, but they're under attack by some nasty customers called the Vorlons." Odin's scales bristled at the mention of the attackers. "Vorlons. Yeah, real piece of work from what we can tell. Reminds me of you guys, actually, no offense." The Hazari general growled but said nothing. As they dropped out of FTL near the Zin homeworld, Odin's eyes widened. The planet was surrounded by angular black ships, raining death upon the surface. By the Empire, Odin breathed. Gabriel was already barking orders. All ships engage Vorlon fleet. Marines prepare for planetside deployment. Priority is civilian evacuation. The space around them erupted in weapons fire. Odin watched in awe as UTA ships effortlessly outmaneuvered the Vorlon attackers, their energy shields shrugging off incoming fire. On the main view screen, Odin saw UTA dropships descending to the planet's surface. Marine squads poured out, laying down suppressing fire against Vorlon ground forces while shepherding terrified Zin civilians to safety. Odin's claws twitched, eager to join the fray, but he held back, observing the humans' precise, coordinated assault. Within hours, the Vorlon fleet was in full retreat. Gabriel turned his attention to the planet below, coordinating medical aid and setting up refugee camps. "I've never seen anything like this," Odin admitted, watching Gabriel work. The Hazari would have simply conquered both sides and been done with it. As they prepared to depart, a junior officer rushed up with a datapad. Gabriel's face fell as he read the report. "Shit," he muttered. "This was just the first wave. We've got a full-scale Vorlon invasion headed our way." He turned to Odin, his expression grave. "We're going to need help, General. Your people know how to fight. Will you stand with us?" Odin stood tall, his warrior's spirit ignited by what he'd witnessed. "The Hazari live for battle," he growled, "but now, thanks to you, we have found a worthy cause to fight for." Gabriel nodded, already planning their next move. As alarms blared and the UTA fleet mobilized, a new chapter in galactic history was about to unfold. The command center buzzed with frantic activity as Gabriel Brown strode in, his face etched with lines of worry. Holographic displays flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the assembled officers. Odin stood to the side, his scaled form a stark contrast to the human personnel. Gabriel's eyes scanned the tactical readouts, taking in the relentless advance of the Vorlon armada. Each blip represented thousands of lives snuffed out, entire systems falling to the invaders' ruthless assault. "General Odin," Gabriel said, his voice cutting through the tense murmur of the room. "You've faced these bastards before. What can we expect?" Odin stepped forward, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "The Vorlons are not to be underestimated," he growled. "They will strike hard and fast, overwhelming our defenses with sheer numbers." The Hazari general manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a Vorlon battleship. Their ships are heavily armored, designed to withstand prolonged engagements, but they're slow, cumbersome. Fleet Admiral Marcus Tolban leaned in, studying the Vorlon formations. "We can use that to our advantage," he said. "Hit-and-run tactics, keep them off balance." Gabriel nodded, his mind racing through potential strategies. "We'll need to coordinate our fleet movements precisely. I want 3 battle groups positioned here, here, and here." He pointed to key systems on the star map. As the officers rushed to carry out their orders, Gabriel pulled Odin aside. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, filled with threats we've only begun to understand." Odin's yellow eyes narrowed. "The Hazari will stand with you," he said. "We may have been enemies once, but now we fight for something greater." Gabriel clasped the alien's scaly arm. "Together, then, for the sake of all sentient life." "All ships execute attack pattern Theta 6, he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "For Earth, for the Zin, for the galaxy itself." The void erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire as the UTA fleet unleashed its opening salvo. Vorlon ships reeled under the onslaught, their formations shattering like glass. Gabriel watched as swarms of UTA fighters darted between the massive capital ships, targeting vital systems with surgical precision. Boarding parties latched onto Vorlon hulls, breaching airlocks in daring attempts to sabotage the enemy from within. The battle raged for days, a cosmic dance of destruction that spanned entire star systems. Gabriel coordinated the UTA's efforts from his command center, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep as he juggled 1,000 different variables. Odin observed it all from a nearby ship, marveling at the humans' tenacity and skill. He watched UTA Marines throw themselves into the line of fire to protect Zin civilians, gunships weaving through debris fields on desperate rescue missions. When the last Vorlon ship finally turned tail and fled, Gabriel slumped against his console, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He keyed the fleet-wide comm, his voice hoarse but filled with pride. "We've held the line," he said. "The Vorlons have been driven back, but this is only the beginning. Rest, tend to your wounded, mourn your dead, because they will be back, and next time they won't be alone." As Gabriel signed off, Odin felt a newfound respect for these humans who had so recently been his enemies. He realized that true strength lay not in conquest, but in the willingness to sacrifice for a greater good. In that moment, he understood what it truly meant to be a guardian of the galaxy. Odin's scales bristled as he absorbed Gabriel's words. The weight of responsibility hung heavy in the air, palpable even to the battle-hardened Hazari general. He stepped closer to the holographic display, his claws clicking against the polished floor. "Show me!" Odin growled, his yellow eyes fixed on the swirling vortices. Gabriel nodded, his fingers dancing across the control panel. The image zoomed in on one of the rifts, revealing a chaotic maelstrom of energy. Tendrils of darkness writhed at its edges, reaching out into the void of space. "We've detected unusual particle emissions from these anomalies," Gabriel explained, his voice low and tense. "Our scientists are still trying to make sense of the data, but it's clear that whatever's on the other side isn't bound by the laws of physics as we understand them." Odin leaned in, studying the rift intently. "And you believe these things are responsible for the Vorlon attack?" "We can't be certain," Gabriel admitted, "but the timing is too convenient to ignore. The Vorlons were acting erratically, almost as if they were being influenced by an outside force." The human leader pulled up another display, this one showing a star system near the galactic fringe. "We lost contact with an outpost in this sector shortly before the Vorlon invasion. When we sent a recon team to investigate, they found this." The hologram shifted, revealing a desolate landscape. The outpost structures were twisted and warped, as if reality itself had been bent out of shape. Odin's breath caught in his throat as he saw the remains of the human colonists, their bodies fused with the very walls and floors of the station, frozen in poses of abject terror. "By the ancestral spirits," Odin whispered, his warrior's composure shaken. Gabriel's face was grim. "Now you understand the true nature of the threat we face. This isn't just about territory or resources. Whatever's coming through those rifts seeks to unmake the very fabric of our existence." Odin straightened, his claws flexing unconsciously. "Then we must strike first, as you said, hit them before they can fully manifest in our reality." "Agreed," Gabriel nodded, "but we'll need every ally we can muster. The Hazari's martial prowess will be crucial in the battles to come." Odin placed a clawed hand on Gabriel's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. "You shall have it, my friend. The Hazari will stand with humanity against this cosmic horror." As they left the chamber, alarms began to blare throughout the station. An aide rushed up, her face pale with urgency. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy spikes from the rift. Something's coming through." Gabriel and Odin exchanged a look of steadfast perseverance. The storm was upon them, ready or not. As they raced towards the command center, Odin felt a primal fear stirring in his warrior's heart, but alongside it burned a fierce tenacity. Whatever nightmares awaited them in the void, they would face them together, human and Hazari united against the darkness. The void of space erupted in a blinding flash as the combined armada tore through the fabric of reality. Odin's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair, his reptilian eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The flagship's view screen struggled to process the kaleidoscope of impossible colors swirling around them. "Transition complete," a UTA officer called out, her voice steady despite the tension permeating the bridge. "All ships accounted for." Gabriel nodded, his gaze fixed on the looming darkness ahead. "Status report on the rift." "Energy readings off the charts, sir," another officer responded, fingers dancing across his console. "We're detecting anomalies, things that shouldn't exist in our universe." Odin leaned forward, studying the swirling vortex of dark matter that dominated the viewscreen. Tendrils of inky blackness writhed at its edges, seeming to reach out hungrily towards the assembled fleet. "By the spirits," he breathed, his warrior's composure shaken. "What manner of battle is this?" Gabriel's face was grim as he turned to address the Hazari general. "One that will test us in ways we can't imagine, old friend, but we have no choice. If we fail here, everything we know and love will cease to exist." A violent shudder ran through the ship, causing alarms to blare across the bridge. Outside, the rift pulsed ominously, its maw stretching wider. The crew watched in horrified fascination as a massive shape began to emerge from the rift. It defied description, a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes that hurt the mind to look upon directly. "All ships, battle stations," Gabriel barked, his voice cutting through the growing panic. "Weapons free, hit that thing with everything we've got." The space around them erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire as the combined might of 3 civilizations unleashed hell upon the emerging horror. Energy beams lanced out, missiles streaked towards their target, and exotic weaponry beyond Odin's comprehension joined the fray. Yet the monstrosity seemed to shrug off the assault, its alien flesh rippling and reforming even as it was torn apart. A psychic scream tore through the minds of everyone present, leaving Odin gasping in pain. What is that thing?" he managed to growl, fighting against the wave of terror threatening to overwhelm him. Gabriel's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the tactical display. "The Vanguard," he said grimly. "And trust me, old friend, it's only the beginning." As if in response to his words, more shapes began to emerge from the rift, each more horrifying and incomprehensible than the last. The battle for reality itself had begun, and Odin found himself facing an enemy beyond anything he had ever imagined. Odin's scaled hand tightened on the tactical rail, his yellow eyes meeting Gabriel's unflinching gaze. The Hazari general's voice came out as a low growl, barely audible over the groaning of stressed metal and the hiss of escaping atmosphere. "To the last, human, and beyond if necessary. Damage control teams to all decks," he barked, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of the bridge. "I want a full assessment of our capabilities within the hour. Tactical, begin plotting approach vectors for the next target." The crew sprang into action, their training overriding the shock and horror of what they'd just witnessed. Odin watched as they moved with practiced efficiency, calling out status reports and relaying orders across the vast network of ships that made up the UTA armada. A young lieutenant approached Gabriel, her uniform singed and her face streaked with soot. "Sir, preliminary reports indicate we've lost nearly 15% of our total fleet strength. The 7th and 12th battle groups were closest to the rift when it collapsed. We're still trying to account for all hands, but—" "They knew the risks, Lieutenant. Their sacrifice won't be in vain." The ship lurched suddenly, sending several crew members stumbling. Odin's claws scrabbled for purchase on the smooth deck plating as he fought to keep his balance. A technician at the sensor station called out, his voice tight with tension. "Gravitational aftershock, sir. The rift's collapse has destabilized local spacetime. We're seeing ripples of distortion spreading outward at FTL speeds." Gabriel's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. "Can we outrun them?" "Negative, sir," the technician replied. "They're overtaking us faster than we can accelerate. Impact in 10 seconds. Odin barely had time to tighten his grip before another violent shudder rocked the flagship. Warning klaxons blared as systems across the ship struggled to compensate for the cosmic forces buffeting them. Through the viewscreen, Odin watched in horrified fascination as the very fabric of space seemed to ripple and distort. Stars elongated into streaks of light, their positions shifting in ways that defied rational explanation. "Drive core fluctuations," an engineer called out. "We're losing containment." Gabriel vaulted over a fallen console, racing to the engineering station. His fingers flew across the controls, initiating emergency protocols that Odin could barely comprehend. "Divert all non-essential power to the structural integrity field," Gabriel ordered. "We need to hold this ship together until the shockwave passes." Odin felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet as the flagship's mighty engines strained against the cosmic onslaught. For endless seconds, it seemed as though the very atoms of the ship might fly apart. And then, as suddenly as it began, the turbulence subsided. The stars snapped back into their familiar patterns, and an eerie calm settled over the bridge. Gabriel sagged against the console, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He looked up, meeting Odin's gaze once more. Odin nodded, turning to survey the battered but unbroken crew around him. They had survived the first test, but he knew in his warrior's heart that far greater challenges lay ahead. The battle for reality itself had only just begun. The flagship lurched violently as reality warped around them. Odin's claws scraped against the deck plating as he fought to maintain his footing. The viewscreen erupted in a cacophony of impossible colors, forcing him to avert his gaze. "Transition complete," called out the navigator, her voice strained. "We've arrived at the coordinates of the second rift, sir." Gabriel nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the swirling vortex that now dominated the viewscreen. "Status report on the fleet." "All ships accounted for," responded the tactical officer. "Minor hull breaches reported on the Dauntless and Resilient, but they're holding formation." Odin felt his scales bristle as he took in the sight before them. The rift pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its edges seeming to blur and shift in ways that defied comprehension. Tendrils of darkness writhed at its periphery, reaching out into the void of space like grasping fingers. "By the ancestral spirits," he breathed, unable to tear his eyes away from the cosmic abomination. Gabriel's hand came to rest on his shoulder, steadying him. "Focus, old friend. Remember what I told you. Do not let it breach your consciousness." Odin nodded, forcing himself to look away from the rift, and instead focus on the bustling activity of the bridge crew. Their faces were etched with tension, but their movements remained precise and practiced. "Weapon systems online," reported the gunnery chief. "Energy banks charged and ready." Gabriel moved to the central hololith, studying the intricate web of targeting data overlaid on the rift's image. "Begin the interlaced firing pattern. I want a continuous barrage. Don't give that thing a chance to stabilize." The ship shuddered as its main guns opened fire, lances of searing energy streaking towards the rift. The rest of the fleet followed suit, their combined firepower creating a dazzling light show against the backdrop of space. Odin watched in awe as the rift began to fluctuate, its edges wavering under the sustained assault. But as the barrage continued, something changed. The darkness at the rift's center seemed to deepen, swirling with malevolent purpose. "Energy readings are spiking," shouted the sensor officer. "Something's coming through." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Intensify forward firepower. We need to seal that breach before—" His words were cut off as a psychic scream tore through the minds of everyone on the bridge. Odin staggered, clutching his head as waves of alien terror and hunger washed over him. Through watering eyes, he saw shapes beginning to emerge from the rift, writhing, tentacled things that hurt the mind to look upon. The fleet's guns blazed with renewed fury, tearing into the emerging horrors. Odin watched as chunks of otherworldly flesh were vaporized, only to reform in impossible ways. The air seemed to thicken with an oppressive wrongness that defied description. Gabriel stood at the center of the storm, barking orders and coordinating the assault with unwavering focus. Odin found himself drawing strength from the human's dedication, using it to anchor himself against the tide of madness threatening to overwhelm him. As the battle raged on, Odin began to understand the true nature of the vigil Gabriel had spoken of. This was no mere war for territory or resources. It was a desperate struggle to preserve the very fabric of reality itself. And as he watched the human forces hold the line against the encroaching chaos, he felt a newfound respect and kinship with these guardians of existence. The rift pulsed once more, disgorging a fresh wave of horrors into real space. Odin steeled himself, ready to face whatever nightmares awaited them in the void. The true test was only beginning. The flagship lurched violently as it tore through the fabric of space-time, hurtling towards the next cosmic wound. Odin's claws scraped against the deck plating as he fought to maintain his balance. The bridge crew worked feverishly at their stations, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering emergency lighting. Gabriel stood at the center of the chaos, his eyes fixed on the swirling vortex that dominated the view screen. The rift pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its edges blurring and shifting in ways that defied comprehension. Tendrils of darkness writhed at its periphery, reaching out into the void of space like grasping fingers. "Energy readings off the scale," shouted the sensor officer, her voice strained. "The rift is expanding at an exponential rate." Gabriel's fingers danced across the tactical console, initiating the next phase of their desperate plan. "All ships, form up on our position. Prepare to execute Rift Suppression Protocol 17 on my mark." Odin watched in awe as the massive fleet realigned itself, tens of thousands of vessels moving in perfect synchronization. The raw power at their command was staggering, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that it might not be enough against the horrors that awaited them. The ship shuddered as its main guns powered up, energy building to levels that threatened to tear the vessel apart. Gabriel's voice cut through the tension, steady and unwavering. "Targeting solutions locked. All batteries, stand by for zero barrage." Odin's scales bristled as he felt the air grow thick with an oppressive wrongness. Through the view screen, he could see impossible shapes beginning to coalesce within the rift's swirling depths. His mind recoiled from the sight, unable to process the alien geometries that seemed to mock the very laws of reality. "By the spirits," he breathed, his warrior's composure shaken to its core. "What manner of battle is this?" Gabriel's eyes never left the tactical display as he responded, his voice low and grim. "One that has raged since the dawn of time, old friend. The only battle that truly matters." With a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of eons, Gabriel brought his hand down on the firing stud. "All batteries, fire!" The space around them erupted in a dazzling display of destructive power. Lances of energy streaked towards the rift, their intensity so great that Odin had to avert his gaze. The combined might of three civilizations unleashed hell upon the cosmic anomaly, tearing into the very fabric of reality itself. For endless moments the outcome hung in the balance. The rift pulsed and writhed, seeming to absorb the onslaught even as it was torn apart. Odin felt his sanity fraying at the edges as alien perceptions and half-formed realities tried to force their way into his consciousness. And then, with a silent scream that resonated through the minds of every being present, the rift began to collapse in on itself. The swirling vortex of darkness imploded, leaving behind only the cold emptiness of space and the echoes of what might have been. Odin sagged against the tactical rail, his body trembling from the strain of what he'd witnessed. Around him the bridge crew moved with mechanical precision, already preparing for the next engagement. He turned to Gabriel, seeing the weight of countless such battles etched into the human's features. "How," Odin began, his voice faltering, "how many more?" Gabriel's gaze remained fixed on the navigation displays as new coordinates cycled into view. "As many as it takes, old friend, for as long as it takes. This is our vigil, our eternal charge." Without another word, the flagship's engines flared to life, propelling them once more into the cosmic abyss. Ahead lay another rift, another battle in a war without end. And standing at the forefront, unyielding in the face of oblivion, was humanity, the guardians of reality itself. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.